Good morning, Anne.
Hi, John.
How are you this morning?
Good.
Excellent.
Good to be here.
Thank you very much indeed for coming into NCH to talk about your new works for New Music Dublin 2024, especially after your mega piece from last year, 2023. You are the lady responsible for MIDHE,
MIDHE, maybe?
Exactly, the kind of vast blowout with the symphony orchestra, the philharmonic choir, lighting, platforms for soloists, literally everything was thrown at that show and made a huge impact on a lot of people. So actually it was the highlight of the festival for a lot of people. They really, really, really loved it. And you're back with part 2, is that right? Do you want to introduce part 2?
Yeah, so part 2 is called TERRARIUM, or TERRARIUM, depending on your accent.
Thanks for that.
like again. And this piece is the second in this trilogy of pieces that I'm writing related to the Midlands of Ireland.
And you're from the Midlands of Ireland?
I am. I'm from Offaly.
You're from Offaly, exactly. And so the reason why you're sort of, I suppose, mining this is because you're very personally, you've grown up there, you feel very connected to it, is that why?
I suppose so, yeah. I've been composing, I suppose, for about like 20 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about. But, you know, I've lived away from Offaly, or had lived away from Offaly for a long time. Right. And then I came back to live there about like 5 years ago or so. And it was kind of amazing to go back with fresh eyes and realize, even though I'd been living in all these other places, I'd always been kind of writing about it in different ways. And the landscape and different almost, I suppose, spirits or ghosts of the region really are a big part of my work. They always have been. So I think in recent years I've been thinking about ways to make that more tangible. Particularly because the region is in such an interesting moment. Right. You know, Ireland in particular, I think, really needs to be decentralised from the cities. And given that the Midlands, so much of the industry there is going through this transition, I think it's a really interesting time to think about what the region could be in the future, like what its history, how we understand that and how that plays into the future. I
mean, the history is actually of the old, ancient, ruling central part of Ireland, isn't it? It's a kingdom, it's a lost, referred to as the lost kingdom.
Yeah, well, MIDHE was where the country was ruled for a long time, right, up to around maybe the 16th, 17th century. Right. Yeah.
And then, so this piece, so MIDHE was about the hill?
Yeah, the sacred hills
of the
Midlands.
TERRARIUM is not?
TERRARIUM relates more to the earth, right, in a way, and again how the layers of the earth have changed dramatically in the Midlands from the Ice Age up to now. Even now, it's undergoing dramatic changes. And so TERRARIUM traces the layers of the earth in the Midlands, in a particular site in the Midlands, from Loch Bora. Okay. So Loch Bora is parklands owned by Bord na Móna. It was a main site for Bord na Móna for industrial peat manufacturing since about the 40s, 50s. It's now, since its resources there have been depleted, it's mainly a public park for people to walk in. Right. And there's a site there that I find really fascinating in terms of these layers of the earth and how they've changed so much over the last 12,000 years. And that is the site of a Mesolithic lake.
Right. The lake's not there anymore.
The lake isn't there.
Right.
The shape of it is the basin in a sense. But the site was discovered in the 70s by Bord na Móna when they were cutting away the peat from the earth. They hit this track that they thought was from the Bronze Age. And to cut a long story short, a team from the National Museum came out, archaeology team, and there was an excavation, and they discovered it was actually a Mesolithic trail.
Wow.
And that before that it was thought that the first people to live in the Midlands were there maybe around the Bronze Age, whereas this actually took that date back 3,000 years further to the Mesolithic times.
Gosh. So in the piece, I mean, you're a composer and you do music. You're not actually a geologist, or maybe you are.
I would like to be.
So how then? So if you're an audience member, what's the experience that you'll get of this? How do you translate that into the music and the whole performance?
Yeah, well, what I really want to evoke in the piece is the land. So even though in the piece there will be the feeling of human impact on the land, I'm not trying to actually recreate a human history of it. It's actually the history of the land itself, and how in the Ice Age this lake was formed from melting glaciers. It was a huge, vast lake and network of lakes in the Midlands in that time of maybe like 12,000 years ago. And then these Mesolithic people would have lived around these lakes. They were migratory people. It's thought that they moved through the Midlands to the coast throughout the year. And then this lake, which I find so fascinating, because the Midlands, we still have lakes, but it's generally land now. The Midlands, in terms of water, that lake drained completely, which I also find fascinating, that these lakes all have a life cycle. They all actually deplete. And so the lake itself gradually drained and earth took over. And this bog grew over 7,000 years.
So you
8,000 years.
Slightly burying the audience in a weird kind of way. Is that the kind of experience you want, that somehow this thing comes to kind of encase you in a way? Exactly.
I want to create the feeling from the beginning of the piece. We begin in ice, and it's the feeling of going from ice to this storm that created this lake, to this beautiful, vast lake from Mesolithic times, to the earth growing through that lake, and the kind of deep time that it took for that bog to grow over the lake. It's thought it grew to about 14 or 15 meters higher than the lake. And when you see diagrams of it, again, I think it's just fascinating, because it's this beautiful dome shape.
Like a hill.
And now it's like a hill in a way.
So but as I understand it, you basically kind of almost grow this hill and then you take it away again at the end. Is that right?
Yeah, well, so from...
In performance, you don't actually really build a hill.
No, through the sound and the visual elements of the piece, we do create this idea of the layers building, and then given it from the 40s to the 70s, when Bord na Móna cut through this bog and hit this Mesolithic lake, we end up back down there, 15 meters below the earth again.
Gosh, amazing. This is Sunday night with Crash Ensemble?
Yes.
In the studio?
Yes.
That's the 28th of April. So
yes.
That's one thing. And then you also have a premiere with Nathan and Alex on Friday, as part of the Archetype thing.
Yes.
And you have Gravity Dreams 4.
Yes.
And as I remarked earlier, you have had other Gravity Dreams, 1, 2, and 3.
I have.
This isn't like the madness of George III. It's like, you know, because this is actually the 4th of your Gravity Dreams piece.
Yes. And yeah, I suppose Gravity Dreams, the 4 pieces I have in the series, they came about, well, not the dreams themselves, I suppose, but the idea came about because in recent years I've written a lot of duos. So each of the Gravity Dreams is a duo, different instrumentation. And I could see, I think a few years ago, all these duos coming up, and I thought, I'd really like something that connects them all, that they're all quite unique pieces, I think. There's a different sense of gravity in each dream, or in each piece.
Or maybe both.
Like for Alex and Nathan, it's this sense of spinning. And you'll hear this I hope you'll hear it in the piece in lots of different ways, from this very minuscule way to something that becomes a bigger and bigger type of spinning. Yeah, I won't give too much away.
Wonderful. Really, really, really looking forward to it. So, festival favourite, Ann Cleare.
Thank you,
Thank you very, very much indeed for coming in and talking to us.
you.